Welcome to Move the Chains with Jonathan Rivers. Here's your host, Jonathan Rivers.
And let there be football. Welcome to Move the Chains. I'm your host, Jonathan Bam Rivers. On the MTC call sheet today, I'm going into the state of the AFC South. In a lot of people's minds, this is the reason that division winners shouldn't necessarily host a playoff game. I'm telling you, because that's how people see this division. That's cool. I don't think it's the best division in football. I don't think it's the third best division in football. But I do think there are a lot of interesting aspects to this division. I'm going to talk about it today. And in my Chain Gang chatter, we're not going to social media today. We're going to Micah versus Jerry. I've tried to stay away from this conversation because I'm tired of hearing people say it, but I'm going to say stuff about the conversation that hasn't been said yet. And it's going to rub people the wrong way. Oh, well. And in my nonsense narrative, Shedeur Sanders is not in a bad situation. I would argue that he's in the best situation possible. And I know you can't believe that, but I'm going to show you why. And last but not least, man, talent in the NFL starts from the top. All that and more here on Move the Chains, but you know how we do it. Let's kick it off with the opening toss. All right, the AFC South has been a one playoff team division for a long time. It's just the truth of the matter. And now it's the Texans' time. It's Houston's time. And I'm going to tell you, the Houston Texans are the cream and the class of this division. But see, I think sometimes they're undervalued because of the division they're in. I'll get to the Colts, the Jaguars, and the Titans, but let me just start with Houston here because this was, remember, one of the most irrelevant and putrid organizations in the NFL just like 3 or 4 years ago. Right? They were firing coaches in a year, back to back. Deshaun Watson was hurt. They were a joke, man. So what happens is when you understand that you can get a haul for a guy like Deshaun Watson, because Deshaun Watson was the beginning of this organization. This is what I mean by that. He was the beginning of the organization because he brought them relevance when he came out of Clemson. And he was the new beginning when he got traded to Cleveland for all those assets. And because Nick Caserio, the GM, was able to turn those assets into ball players, right? Kamari Lassiter, ball player. Will Anderson, ball player. Tank Dell, ball player. C.J. Stroud, ball player. They also were able to get Stephon Diggs, even though he's no longer there, who helped them go to the playoffs. He was a ball player and a leader. The Houston Texans, guys, are in a position to where everybody likes to talk about the Bengals and everybody likes to talk about the Ravens and they like to talk about the Bills. And I get it with the Ravens and the Bills, not as much the Bengals. The Houston Texans, if C.J. Stroud can be protected, are an organization, not just a team, an organization that can vie for an AFC championship game and be that next team to try to challenge Kansas City. I'm just being honest with you. And we don't want to talk about it because for some reason, DeMeco Ryans, we know he's a great coach, but because he's quote-unquote defensive-minded, we don't give him the nod. Remember, he's a defensive-minded head coach with a fire quarterback who's young because he knows how to develop. The biggest problem in Houston, man, is protecting C.J. Stroud. Outside of Caleb Williams, he was sacked more than any other quarterback last year, which is why that's what they have to bolster. And, man, I'm looking at Houston. When you have a Joe Mixon and a Nick Chubb, health will be an issue there. I think you have the opportunity to have one of the best play-action games in football, one of the best defenses in football, one of the best young head coaches. Outside of what C.J. Stroud can do, you protect him. This team is phenomenal. Now, the Indianapolis Colts are a team that I'm going to get to in a little bit. But the Jacksonville Jaguars. So I look at Jacksonville, man, and do you understand that when I say I don't trust this team, it's not because I don't see a future with this team, because I do, and I'll get to that. But look at last year. They had a negative 15 or minus 15 turnover margin last year. Bro, I feel like that's almost impossible in the NFL. They also were 38% on third down last year. It shows you what happens. Trevor Lawrence ended up getting hurt. Absolutely. But this is why there may be hope in Jacksonville. I'm on record by saying I don't trust this team. I think they've been the worst team in the NFL, regardless of what record you're looking at. I know Tennessee's record has been worse, but to me, Jacksonville was bad because they have no plan, but they had talent. Let's recalibrate expectations for the Jaguars, because if you want them to be phenomenal, you need to make sure that Trevor Lawrence is consistent. And I think that'll come from new head coach Liam Cohen, because Liam Cohen came from Tampa Bay, where he had Bucky Irvin and Rashad White. Now you've got ETN and you've got Tank Bigsby in Jacksonville. You can run the football and be effective there. I'm just saying Jacksonville needs to recalibrate their expectations, because your quarterback is not transcended at this point, but he can be consistent, which means everything around him has to be consistent. And you're coming in with a first-year head coach, a first-year offensive coordinator, and a first-year defensive coordinator. It's going to have to take time. Now, Tennessee, to me, is very, very intriguing because, to me, it's all about Cam Ward with the Titans. It's going to be all about Cam Ward. But, man, this reminds me of the Steelers when they drafted Ben Roethlisberger. You may be looking at me like I'm crazy for making this comparison. But there's a lot of veteran talent that they brought in. Tony Pollard they brought in. Tyler Lockett they brought in. They've got Calvin Ridley. And do you know Tennessee's defense was number 2 overall in yards per game last year? They were also number 2 in pass defense. Now, the reason Tennessee wasn't good last year is because their defense gave up 68% or so in terms of its touchdown percentage in the red zone. You can't do that. Some stats lie, that stat doesn't. Because if you look at stock, right, I've always heard this adage, and it says you never go broke taking a profit. Opponents never went broke against Tennessee's defense in the red zone because they were giving up 6 points more often than they were giving up 3 or nothing. That's got to change. And people hear what Cam Ward is doing in camp about him challenging Jeffrey Simmons and stuff. Cam Ward's not afraid of anybody. I'm not saying that that's what you need to focus on. I'm simply saying that Cam Ward is a guy who's calm all the time. You've seen it when you saw him at Washington State. You've seen it when you saw him at Miami. I didn't see him in Incarnate Word, so I'm not going to say I saw it then. I'm just saying he's a guy that understands who he is and what he has to do. And the Indianapolis Colts, to me, are the team that epitomizes why football should be complimentary. Zaire Franklin, nobody talks about this all-pro, who's just always top 3 in tackles in the NFL. Michael Pittman Jr., nobody talks about how good of a red zone threat and how good of a receiver Michael Pittman Jr. is. Nobody talks about how electric Josh Downs is. They talk more about Caleb Downs in college, right, his baby brother, than they do about him. He was a baller in North Carolina. He's a baller in Indy. Why? Because there's no complimentary piece in Indianapolis, because they haven't been able to get the quarterback position fixed. And they're in the market like Indianapolis. Remember, when Indianapolis had Peyton Manning and Reggie Wayne and Edgerrin James and Marvin Harrison and Jeff Saturday and Robert Mathis and Dwight Freeney, they had a squad, which is why they were talked about. The market didn't matter. But now, because they don't have anybody to just span the tide at quarterback, they're struggling. So this is a division of struggle right now. That's all I'm telling you. Houston, I'm going to go back to my point to end this that I started with. Please understand that Houston can easily be the team that's the next challenger to the Kansas City Chiefs for AFC supremacy, because they have a head coach in place, they've got a quarterback, and they've got a system from the top down that they were able to literally flip in about a year or two. That doesn't happen in the NFL. And because it happened in Houston, they went from one of the worst franchises to one of the best. All right, when we get back from the break, it's Chain Gang Chatter, but there's no questions right now. It's Micah and Jerry. And as much as I hate it, you're going to love what I have to say. Back when we'll move the chains, right after this. Welcome back in to Move the Chains. And before we get to Chain Gang Chatter today, I want to take this opportunity, as always, to thank my Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ, for hosting Move the Chains. I also want to thank you, the fans, wherever you support the show. It's truly, truly greatly appreciated. To the best production crew in the business, hats off to you, as always, the men and women who make sure this show runs smoothly and is going to the level in which it is going. And lastly, you've seen the QR code at the bottom of the screen. I've continued to tell you for the last couple of weeks, if you're hurting either mentally, financially, spiritually, or physically, scan the QR code with your phone and contact Robert. All right? Having said all that, you know what time it is. It's time for the Chain Gang Chatter. I know you may think I'm lying. I really didn't want to do it. Like because I'm the biggest person that says that people talk too much about the Dallas Cowboys, and I don't think they shouldn't be talked about. But I think people spend an inordinate amount of time talking about Dallas. But there's a voice that I want you to hear, and it's the owner of the Cowboys. Before I give you my 2 cents about Micah versus Jerry, roll it.
We sign him doesn't mean we're going to have him. He was hurt 6 games last year. Seriously. We've signed, I remember signing a player for the highest paid at the position in the league, and he got knocked out 2/3 of the year, Dak Prescott. So there's a lot of things you can think about when you, just as the player does, when you're thinking about committing and guaranteeing money.
So let me just say this. Like, you have to understand what he just said was 100% true about Micah Parsons getting hurt and about Dak Prescott getting hurt. Now, remember, Trayvon Diggs, Dak Prescott, Micah Parsons, arguably the 3 best players on the Cowboys, missed a total of 15 games last year. That's when they were 7-10. The previous 3 seasons, they went 12-5. right? So here's my point about this situation. I have no dog in this fight, and I don't care because both sides have points. And see, that's what people don't want to say. Everybody is on the side of Micah Parsons. If it were my decision and I had the power to extend Micah Parsons, I would have extended him after his third season because he's shown himself to be a very good football player, especially on the defensive side of the football, especially getting after the quarterback, which is at a premium in the league. And I also would have done it because it would have saved me some money in order of cap space. Many people agree with that sentiment. But this is what people don't want to say. They don't want to say that he missed 6 games last year. Jerry Jones is right. They don't want to say that he's under contract, is making $20-something million this year. They don't want to say that. They don't want to say that Micah Parsons, in 4 seasons, in 4 playoff games, has 8 total tackles and 1 sack. I'm telling you that because those are things that Jerry Jones can use to say this is why we're not going to extend him yet. In addition to him still having a 5th year under the contract. In addition to him, because of the NFLPA agreement, having 2 years of franchise tag after that. People think Jerry Jones is obligated to extend Micah Parsons, and he's not. And listen, player empowerment is phenomenal. You see it in the NBA. You see it a little bit more in college football now, and NFL players want it. Bro, I'm all for player empowerment. But what I'm telling you is player empowerment is limited because the player is the player. And I know you don't want to hear that. I don't like to say it, but it's just the truth. So if Micah Parsons decides to hold out this year and he's able to not play and not get penalized for it, bruh, more power to him. He will be doing something that a lot of players can't do. He has the right to do that. But also, let's just speak the truth that Jerry Jones has the right to act the way he's acting. And I'm not mad at Jerry. You know why? Because Jerry's shown me who Jerry has been forever. I've been watching NFL for a long time. Jerry's been the same dude. Agree, disagree, or if you're indifferent. I'm just telling you, I'm not going to sit here and get upset because this man has done this before. He just said he did it with Dak. He's taking it to the brink with CD, so we expect Jerry to be different. And then if you throw in what people are talking about now, that the agent that represents Mike is the same agent who represents Deshaun Watson, and everybody has that type of feeling when it comes to the owners because of the Deshaun Watson deal being the highest guaranteed deal ever. Like, I get it. I get the outrage. But let's put everything in perspective and speak true about the situation. Micah has a leg to stand on, and so does Jerry. And that's why they haven't come to an agreement. But let's see if this actually comes to Micah Parsons not playing against the Eagles week 1. Then we can sit down and have a real conversation. All right, when we get back from the break, it'll be my nonsense narrative. Shedeur Sanders is in a bad situation. No, he's actually in the best situation, and I'm going to tell you why. Back on my favorite segment of the show, right after this. Welcome back in the Mood to Change, and I'm not going to delay this, man. It's time for my favorite segment of the show. It's time for the nonsense narrative. Why are there so many people that think Shedeur Sanders is in a bad situation? I don't know. Like, I get it. He was drafted in the 5th round. He shouldn't have been. You and I agree with that. The Cleveland Browns have not been the best organization. You and I both agree with that. But I'm saying I think those are reasons why he's actually in a great situation, man. Look at this. What are people expecting Shedeur Sanders to do? If they're saying we drafted him in the 5th round, we think he's a 5th-round draft pick, which means you don't think he's a top 10 pick. We all know that not to be true, but I'm telling you what they think, okay? And let me speak this first before I even get into that. For people to say that 32 teams missed out on Shedeur Sanders or 32 teams passed him up, it's not true because 32 teams didn't need Shedeur. Chiefs don't need him. Bills don't need him. Right? The Ravens don't need him. So, and that's just a couple. The Eagles don't need him. So let's stop sitting here saying 32 teams passed on him. Now, back to my original point. You must not know who Shedeur Sanders is. And I keep saying this, Shedeur Sanders is in this situation because he is the situation. What do I mean by that? I mean, Shedeur is mature. Why? Because he was raised in that environment by a Hall of Fame football player at the collegiate and the pro level. Shedeur is mature beyond his years. Why? Because he was raised by a guy who showed him that you need to work for what you want and not let it be taken for granted. Shedeur is mentally ready. Why? Because he understands how to lead a locker room. That's why people are gravitating to him now. So why is he in the worst situation possible? Why is Shedeur not somebody who just knows how to handle the situation and is going to show people how wrong they were? I get it. If you're a Shedeur Sanders supporter, you think that everything somebody says about Shedeur Sanders that's negative is they're a hater. It's not. At some point during the season, if Shedeur plays, I'm going to have something negative to say about him because he may make a mistake in the game or he may do something wrong. It happens. That doesn't mean I'm not a Shedeur Sanders fan, because I am, but I'm going to sit here objectively. And for those people who hate Shedeur Sanders, every little thing he does are going to nitpick. Why is it so hard to look at the situation for what it is? This man is a fifth-round pick and has every opportunity to do what most fifth-round picks don't do. Ball out because he's accurate. Ball out because he's a leader. Ball out because he's mature. Ball out because he is confident. And I'm not going to apologize for his confidence, and neither should he. And I think it's just a nonsense narrative that people, one, think he's in a bad situation, and they think that he's somebody who's confident. Bro, do you have a problem with Joe Burrow being confident? Do you have a problem with Tom Brady being confident and cussing out officials on the sideline? You should, with the sideline part, but confidence, don't cast it away, for it has great reward. So when you're in this situation, I think Shedeur is in the best situation possible, not the worst, because Shedeur is the situation. And when you are the situation, you create the culture, and he has been, and will always be, in my mind, a culture creator. All right, when we come back from the break, it'll be the final drive, and I'm going to tell you where talent in the NFL actually starts. Back with the last segment of Move the Chains, right after this. And welcome back to Move the Chains, and it's time for the final segment of the show. It's time for the final drive. Oh, listen, talent in the NFL doesn't start with what happens on the field. It starts with how it's evaluated. There are so many general managers and organizations that don't know how to evaluate talent. And then when they go out and get said talent, when talent hasn't had that much experience in college, they wonder why the talent doesn't develop on the field as quickly as they want it to. Because you go out and you bet on a kid because he has upside, yet you're not the individual nor the organization who knows how to develop the upside and turn it into actual kinetic energy that is getting done instead of being potential energy that could get done in the future. All right, don't forget, you can not only catch us right here on the Sports Leader WXTX Fox 54, but you can also catch us on YouTube. Make sure you go to the YouTube channel. It's @move_the_chains. Make sure you like, subscribe to the channel, leave a comment, hit that notification bell so you are notified every time we post a video. And we're here for it. Hey, another banger, as always, for the best production crew in the business. I'm your boy, Jonathan Bam Rivers, and always remember, build every day of your life brick by brick. And the QR code at the bottom, don't forget, if you're hurting physically, spiritually, mentally, or financially, scan the QR code, contact Robert, and he'll be able to put you in the best position possible. And as always, right here on Move the Chains, until next time, God bless.